GALP
おい大地、ブッシュヒルゴルフパークで会おう。最寄りの駅は地下鉄ビクトリア線のコックフォスターズだよ。ブッシュロード、コックフォスターズ、マジでそんな場所本当にあんの？からかわれてる？絶対からかわれてるよな。もうネットで調べたいのに、ロンドンマジで Wi-Fi 全然ないんだけど、どうなってんの？海外旅行や出張の準備は万全ですか？次回日本を離れる際はグローバル Wi-Fi で安心。イギリスやアメリカを含む200以上の国と地域で Wi-Fi が利用可能。全国39カ所、そして20の空港で便利な受け取りサービスをご用意。さらに128の国と地域で無制限プランも。お得な価格で快適なインターネットを。今すぐタウン Wi-Fi.com にアクセスし、クーポンコード GAL を入力して 10% 割引をゲットしましょう。この番組はグランドスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
Honestly, I don't know what to do or how to really start this episode. Koei Tecmo had sent us the code for Wild Hearts S, a game that is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2, basically a port with additional features and without EA's input. Before we get into it, let's go through our disclaimer. For you new folks, GALP is a weekly gaming discussion podcast under the GALP Podcast Network. We talk about all sorts of games from big AAA titles all the way to awesome indie games, but our forte is Japanese games, so expect that a lot. We can be found anywhere where you listen to your podcasts, including Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, now on YouTube, as well as Podbean. So remember, if you want to join in on the fun, follow us on all of our socials: Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, X, all of it at GALP Podcasts. And whilst you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star review and leave a comment, because it does actually help, promote the show and basically get found by other listeners. So appreciate that. Before I give my thoughts, let me give you guys an overview of what the game is, as well as the additional features. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, I've linked our original Wild Hearts review on Spotify, so you can have a feel of my overall opinion on this game franchise. Wild Hearts was originally under EA's Originals banner, and the announcement of Koei and EA's partnership came pretty much out of nowhere within a state of play, I believe. Quite an unexpected combo. However, it's worth mentioning that EA used to publish Koei's games in Europe in the early PS2 days before Koei established a European office in the early 2000s. This series is basically a spiritual successor to the Tokiden series, a monster hunting style game on the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation 4. One can argue that Tokiden was incredibly popular due to the fact that there was no monster hunting style game on the Vita at the time. Capcom didn't make a new Monster Hunter for that console, so Koei decided to drop a new IP, which I can only imagine annoyed Capcom. As you guys may or may not know, Capcom and Koei aren't really the best of friends, having sued each other in the past on numerous occasions over game mechanics, etc. But also the fact that they make pretty similar games with the same genre and setting at times. I'm talking about you, Samurai Warriors and Sengoku Basara. Anyway, back onto the point. I felt that Tokiden died down when it made its way to home consoles with the PS4. Not that it wasn't a good game, but people were used to playing Tokiden on the go and handheld. It was very convenient. Plus, Capcom, their competitor, was releasing Monster Hunter games on the PS4, so there was competition. Not to mention that people stopped playing online because the online play was no longer free of charge. It was free on the PlayStation Vita because the Vita kind of came out in this era where PSN was free to use because it came out during the PS3 era, actually towards the end of the PS3 era into the early PS4 era, And this is something that the publisher can choose to do. I think for a game like Wild Hearts or Tokiden to gain more popularity versus games like Monster Hunter, I believe online play should be free. And that should be the first thing that Koei should have done. I mentioned this also in my Wild Hearts review, that it would have been great if EA had opted in for free online play. Obviously, they do get a cutback and things, and I get that. But it was just a bit of a pain to get people to play online, etc. when you have to pay for it. I think it would have made it a lot easier if it was free to play online, if that makes sense. So you do have that entry barrier of paying for the game, and then also online play is free. I think that should be something Koei should have done, EA should have done. But yeah, Tokiden as a game felt very much rooted in Shintoism and yokai and that sort of culture. After all, you were fighting Oni and yokai and had support from Mitama, basically the spirits of fallen historical figures. It was fantastic. And I love how Koei Tecmo brought the community together. You know, people were hosting lobbies, playing the game with one another. Despite the fact that the game had big limitations with online play, it wasn't open world. In fact, that game was very much mission based, and you had to matchmake each time you guys set out for a mission. Why am I talking about online play here? Let me get to the point. Online play is very integral to both the Tokiden series and Wild Hearts series, because Tokiden can still be enjoyed by all players, including people who are new to this genre. And Wild Hearts, unfortunately, can't be properly enjoyed without online play. The world is pretty desolate and empty. NPCs aren't as useful in comparison to Tokiden, and playing the game alone makes it harder to get through the game. The monsters have the same level of difficulty whether or not you're playing online, so it makes it a lot harder to play solo. Online play allows for people to visit your own town, interact with you, as well as special missions. I did mention this in my previous episode, so kind of get on that. This episode is more so why I think the Switch version isn't necessarily the best. Oops, I spoiled that a little bit, like almost halfway through the episode, but you guys can tell, and I'm going to be really honest with you guys. It's also worth noting that this game doesn't have in-game chat, which Wild Hearts did originally, but rather relies on Nintendo Switch game chat, which I'm not really a fan of, especially for these types of games where communication is key and you don't really need to add people and that kind of thing. I think it gets a little bit messy doing it over game chat, especially with random people. I don't think Koei has listened to the feedback overall from Wild Hearts 1, and you might be thinking, well, technically, it wasn't really their game. EA had published it, but Koei was the one that was actually actively supporting the game through updates, as well as a Megaforce, right? So they would have gotten the feedback. I don't think Koei did listen to it. Online play is still set by region, which I was really annoyed by previously. You need to select a region for matchmaking, and the same issue occurs as the original game, where if you want to play the game, you need to set your region to Japan, otherwise you're not going to find players, right? Because, you know, okay, you can set your region to Europe, but even within Europe, I believe actually it's not by region. I believe it's by language, which is even worse. And I don't think that's a good system. So often, you know, to get people on board and to get actual players, I would set my language to Japanese. And, you know, back then my Japanese wasn't necessarily the best. So it was like, I don't know what to say, but you kind of learn a little bit, you know, basic phrases and things like that, or tasukere, you know, like help me, you know, that you learn basic Japanese phrases as a result. So if you're one to learn Japanese, or if you want to learn another language, then yeah, this is an unexpected game function. It's not a positive one, but it is an unexpected one. So yeah, I don't like that feature of selecting by language. I think it's very limiting. And like I mentioned, why do I have to set it to Japan? Because the only players of this game online are Japanese players. You're not going to find people in your region, and you might do, at least initially on launch, but after that, no one's really going to care. Like a lot of the people that I saw playing this game before Monster Hunter Wilds came out, and by the way, Capcom picking a very similar name to Koei's IP, it was a bit weird, but the majority of people that were playing this game and actually supporting this game were the Japanese public. So a lot of people in Japan were playing this game, and rarely anyone in English-speaking regions were streaming this game or actually setting up lobbies and things like that. So yeah, if you do want to set up a lobby, you might have to do it yourself. Better yet, arrange something on the Koei Tecmo Discord, like a games night or something. There is no NPCs to assist in solo battles, as I mentioned, like Tokiden. And because S is a Switch 2 port, there's no crossplay at all, nor will there ever be. And this is something that I find people have commented on, especially people within the Koei Tecmo Discord, and they feel that I'm crushing their spirit. This is simply basic publishing information, right? Because EA has the publishing rights to the original Wild Hearts. Koei clearly doesn't, hence why they've ported this game to the Switch 2. And that's a very interesting thing. So why would they do ports back over, right? Even the original Wild Hearts did not have crossplay, which is something that I did mention. So why would they add that in there, especially for a game that Koei doesn't really support anymore? The original Wild Hearts, that is. So it just doesn't make sense. And also there are new features, which I imagine would kind of limit it. the new features kind of are based to like new areas to explore and things like that. So it is something that if Koei really wanted to, they should have kind of bought the rights back from EA or something like that and made this game available as DLC for PS5 owners, PC owners, Xbox owners, etc., and then included play. But we're not going to see crossplay, and we need to admit that. I think we can't be living in a fantasy world a lot of the time, especially with games like this. It's not going to have crossplay. I'm sorry if I'm breaking people's dreams. That was something that people had often said of me in the Koei Discord. I was like, okay, cool. Guys, we need to be realistic. Koei is not going to. No one's calling it out. No one's mentioning it. Us having these sort of delusions of grandeur, like us thinking, oh yeah, Koei's going to do it. Koei's not going to do it. Koei's not going to do it. We just need to face that fact. But we need to also call it out. We need to mention, I don't like this and I don't like that. And I know a lot of people are going to call me out for this review because it's like, oh, Bish, you're being incredibly negative. I love Wild Hearts. And you can see from my previous episode, I did love this series. So let's talk about S for a bit. I assume S stands for Switch. And it's possible that Koei's contract with EA had expired and they now have publishing rights so that they can re-release this game with additional content. I'm not going to call it an enhanced version because this is an inferior version of Wild Hearts. The only reason Koei would release it would be for complex licensing and publishing reasons, which I'm not really going to get into because for some reason people don't like when I talk about this stuff, so I'm not going to. People didn't play this game as much on the PS5, and it was a shame because it was actually very fun despite its faults. And I don't think people should really play and buy the Switch 2 port, even though you do get additional content and you do get some quality of life changes and updates. But I'm going to say this up front. This game is horrible on the Switch 2. For it being a dedicated Switch 2 game, it's not well optimized at all. There's many glitches, some old from the previous game that they never actually fixed, and some new. Textures in this game are subpar. At one point, I didn't even realize I was walking through a pond because there was no effects to indicate that I was walking on water or even reflections in the water. Or if I'm walking through snow, I didn't see any footprints, which you did get to see in the original Wild Hearts on the PlayStation 5, a game that was also running on 4K. The Switch 2 version, obviously, we know the Switch doesn't run in 4K, it just outputs in 4K. I get that, but you would have thought that a bit more effort would have been put into it. I'll give you an example of the poor performance. I was fighting the first kimono in the game, so one of the first monsters, and it had knocked down a tree, and the tree shattered into what I can only describe as weird PS1 looking polygon turds compared to the PS5 and the Xbox versions where textures are properly mapped and destructible environments work as you expect them to be. The Switch 2 port is also less vibrant and has some slowdown and performance issues, unfortunately. For example, there is a bit of a choppy frame rate, especially during combat. But what worries me more is that the game actually runs a bit slower than the original, despite being a slightly smaller game, at least storage-wise. And I obviously imagine that there must have been reasons why. The game is not that much smaller. I mean, it's 33 gigabytes compared to the 40 gigabyte game that we got on the PlayStation 5. So Koei, in theory, could have put in better textures. They could have put in a lot of other stuff. For the sake of 7 gigs, I think people would have appreciated that a little bit more. But anyway, I'm not too sure if there was maybe a limit put on by certain Switch 2 games, etc. I'm not sure of that fact there. But yeah, the game actually runs slower, which is kind of noticeable. And I noticed this when I was running and when like there was kimonos, especially the monsters. They move a lot slower, and so does your character, especially using karakuri, which is like the magic in the game where you get to build like different boxes and walls and stuff like that. Honestly, what upset me the most about Wild Hearts S was the visuals. Wild Hearts, especially on the PS5, was a very good looking game, especially for Koei standards. But Wild Hearts S felt like it should be running on the original Switch. And part of me thinks, and this is a little bit of a conspiracy here, part of me thinks that this might have been a failed Switch port. Koei might have presented this to EA and said, hey, here's a Switch version as well for the original Switch. And EA refused to even publish that alongside the PS5 and the PC versions because it would effectively hurt the rest of their game. And maybe that might be why Koei has been given rights to the Switch 2 version, because EA didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I don't know. The game looks dull. It's just disappointing. Now, if the original game had looked like this and played like this, I'll be honest, I would have forgiven it, especially if it was released on the Switch 2 first and then made its way to PS5 and blah, blah, blah. I would have forgiven it. But considering what we know and considering what we've played in the past, we know how good the game can be, especially in 1080p and even in 4K. So I think we should have gotten that. Koei knows how to make good games. We know this. But this port is not it. And if you want to properly experience Wild Hearts, you can, because it's on the PC. It's on the PS5. And better yet, if you don't want to take the risk of buying this game, it's on Game Pass. Give it a go. You have nothing to lose. It's a fun and great game made by Koei. And guess what? Buying it on the PS5 or on the PC or even on Xbox is cheaper than buying the Switch 2 version of it. So do yourself a favor. Do not buy this game, even if it's on sale, because it's a lazy product and it's a subpar experience. And I hope Koei can learn from it and actually work on something that's maybe built for the Switch 2 in mind. Maybe a Tokiden 3 that's optimized for Switch 2. And even handheld play. Give us the experiences that we yearned for back in the day on the PlayStation Vita. There is a reason why Capcom didn't release or announce Monster Hunter Wilds on the Switch 2, because they know they won't be able to properly port it. And I won't be surprised if Capcom doesn't make their own Switch 2 Monster Hunter game instead of porting Wilds. So if Capcom's not doing it, I don't think Koei should be doing it. Koei should be making new experiences that are well optimized for the Switch 2 instead of turning a great and fun game into a piece of monster hunting slop. I'm sorry if this review sounds harsh, but I really want it known that stuff like this is not acceptable, especially when we know that Koei can do better and we know that Koei can make great games. They've come out with some heavy hitters. Dynasty Warriors Origins, Warriors Abyss, even the new Ninja Gaiden game. Koei knows how to make good games. We shouldn't expect any less, and this game is very bad. So this is not it. If you want to support Wild Hearts, buy the original version. Don't buy the Switch 2 version. That's all I'm going to say. And I also want to address the Koei Tecmo community, because in recent years, we love Koei Tecmo and they've always been good to us, right? But I find that a lot of content creators, especially because Koei supports smaller content creators, I find that a lot of content creators bend over backwards for Koei and they're like, oh, we love Koei and we da-da-da-da-da, and they'll never be critical of them. Even though the game might be horrible, the game might be bad, they will never sort of mention it to them. I'm only mentioning how bad this game is because I don't think it's fair for the community that, I've had a part in building. And I'll be honest with you guys, if Koei makes a great game, I'll be honest, I'll say, yep, hands down, 10 toes down, this is a great game. If they don't, then I'll have to be honest with you guys. And I am today. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And once again, we'll see you on for the next episode. I didn't mention I was going to talk about Donkey Kong for the next episode. And that was like 4 episodes ago. But you know what? Time. I just don't have the time. Anyway, that being said, see you guys. Bye.